Hey, good morning. Welcome to the CGS Biblecast. Thank you so much for joining us here. If you hear some background noise today, it's because it's pouring rain right now. We're getting slammed. It's either super hot right now or it's just completely pouring rain and storming. But anyway, we're still talking about Job. We're studying Job in the Old Testament still, and we got a great message here today and an encouraging one for us in regards to wisdom. Now, wisdom is a funny thing because so many times people think that wisdom only comes with age. The older, the wiser, am I right? It seems to make sense too, like the more you live, the more experiences you have, the more you learn. And, from my own life, I feel like that as I've gotten older, that I've gotten wiser just because I have more of life behind me. I've seen more and I've experienced more and I've trusted more as I've grown in my faith and as just who I am. I just have more experience and more perspective. But maybe you're like me and you've been impressed with someone that is younger than you and their wisdom. There are some people that just are wise and they have some great things to say and it's worth speaking up. And then sometimes I've come across some older people that I'm like, I don't think this is good advice. I think this is terrible. Or they have been through life and experienced so much pain and so much in life that could have taught them so much, but they decide instead to keep making the wrong mistakes over and over again. And they're not learning from these mistakes. They're not gaining wisdom and discernment. Instead, they're just learning complacency, and they're just stuck in this loop, and they're not becoming wise. So the Bible teaches about wisdom and how it only comes from God. Yeah, age and experience helps, but really true discernment, true wisdom comes from the Lord, not a passage of time. The Spirit compelled this guy named Elihu to speak. Despite being the youngest and least educated person there, a word of wisdom was put on his heart to remind Job that God is greater. Let's read it here. Here we go. Job chapter 32, verse 8, he's speaking about this prompting of the Spirit. But it is the Spirit in a person, the breath of the Almighty, that gives them understanding. So he's trying to get across this point that it's just the Spirit. It's God speaking through me that makes me wise, not my age, not my experiences or education. And for these others, just because they have more education, more experience, and just life behind them doesn't necessarily make them right in this particular situation. So he's trying to correct these friends. There's three friends in this section. Job is very repetitive. It's very long for such a straightforward story, but there's lots of dialogue, back and forth from different people coming to him and trying to get through to this guy, and Job's trying to get to them. I didn't do anything. This is just, believe me, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't sin. And that's what he's doing. These guys are saying, you sinned, you caused this, and you're not admitting it. You have pride. You're not willing to admit that you've sinned. And Job's reply is, no, I didn't. And so this Elihu guy decides to speak up, and he first defends himself speaking up. And then here I have my Bible notes here, and I'm going to read from it, so apologize if I don't look at the screen. But so he gives a speech, and he says, here in this note, it says, his speech is partly true. He was urging Job to look at his suffering from a different perspective and with a greater purpose in mind. While he spoke on a higher spiritual plateau than the others, Elihu was wrongly assuming that a correct response to suffering always brings healing and restoration, and that suffering is always in some way connected to sin. He's not all the way right. He is right, though, when he's talking about God being greater, and that message is true. So Elihu spoke when prompted by the Spirit. I'm sure he second-guessed himself, and as he's waiting there, letting the older ones speak and knowing his place, he second-guessed himself, I'm sure of it. But he spoke up. Question is today, my challenge for you today is, will you speak up when the Spirit prompts you? God is not limited by physical age of those he chooses to speak through. All he requires is an open heart and a willingness to obey his commands. So is that you today? Are you willing to set aside all of these preconceived notions of wisdom? Are you willing to set aside all these ideas that you may have and submit to the knowledge that Christ gives and the knowledge of the Spirit gives us in our heart? And when that's there, when that check is there to speak up, will you have the courage to do so? All right, be encouraged. Doesn't matter if you're young or old or too young, it doesn't matter. Just speak up when the Spirit prompts you. We want to hear what's from the Lord. Have a good day.